Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar. As always, we have a great presentation for you and looking forward to covering today's topic. We're going to be discussing Social Security, and it's actually one of our more popular topics. Everyone essentially has access to Social Security, and there's always a lot of questions around when you should take it and how to maximize your benefits and how to minimize the taxes related to it. And how does my spouse, how do they participate? Do they receive a benefit? Do they not? If they worked, did they not work? So again, a lot of questions with this. So we're going to cover a lot of the ins and outs with Social Security and give you a lot of food for thought based on today's topic. My name is Matt Wilson. I am the President and Chief Investment Officer here at Keen Wealth Advisors, and we are a retirement planning and investment management firm headquartered in Overland Park, Kansas. And we have clients all over the country, but our headquarters here in Overland Park, and we really look to educate people on all the various things that they're facing as they approach retirement. And that's what today's topic is. It's Social Security. Again, one of the things that you'll face, a decision that you have to make. And I want to cover what those decisions are and how you can evaluate those decisions, and hopefully you pick up a thing or two. We have a lot of clients that are on today's webinar, and I appreciate everyone providing their questions ahead of time. That shapes some of the content. If we don't get to the questions, I encourage you to tune in to our podcast, which you can find at keenwealthadvisors.com under the Retirement Resources tab, because we will answer questions that we received before the webinar, during the webinar. If you have questions, again, put them into the chat and we will answer them on a future podcast episode. Also at Keen Wealth Advisors, you can subscribe to get updates to all of our content as it's released, whether it's our podcast, our blog, and future webinars. If you'd like a copy of Mr. Keen's Amazon best-selling book, Keen on Retirement, Engineering the Second Half of Your Life, we have second edition out, and happy to send you a copy. No cost for that. Just send me an email, mwilson@keenwealthadvisors.com, and just say you'd like a copy of the book and provide your address if we don't already have it. If you'd like me to send a copy of that book to someone else too, happy to do that as well. You can also reply to any of the emails that you receive from us, and we would happily get a copy of the book in the mail to you. Also, check out our YouTube channel, Keen Wealth Advisors. You can go to youtube.com/@KeenWealthAdvisors to check that channel out. There we post our webinars, the replay of the webinars, also our podcast, the video associated with the podcast. You can watch that on YouTube. Yeah, we were fortunate to be recognized as one of the best financial advisory firms in 2025 and in 2026. So very excited about that. Not something that we were applying for. It's actually something that was people had nominated on our behalf, and again, happy to be excited to be recognized as one of those best advisory firms by USA Today. All right, today's topic, Social Security planning. What you need to know to maximize your retirement income. And, again, the reason we're talking about Social Security is because there's a lot of choices that you have. And I've seen people make mistakes with this, and not because they chose to. It was just they didn't know all the options that were available to them. Social Security does a great job. They have a lot of resources on their website, ssa.gov. There is people that work for the Social Security Administration, and they do the best they can with helping people understand their choices. But they don't have the entire picture that we do. We know what you're looking to accomplish with all of your retirement resources and how the taxes play into your decisions around Social Security. So it's not easy to make a decision with Social Security in a vacuum, because a common question I receive is just, well, when should I take it? And if you're not a client, or if I don't know enough about you, then I generally have a lot of follow-up questions to help frame the answer around your specific situation. And that's what we're trying to do today is help people understand those choices and help you look at it through your individual situation, because everyone's situation is different. We know people are at different different stages of life and have different circumstances, and those decisions are unique to you. So here's what we're going to cover. Will Social Security be there for you? I'm sure you've been told for years that the system is going broke, and you need to get the money while you can. But also you want to know how much you can expect to receive. How does this money get to me, and how much tax do I have to pay? When should I apply for it too? Many of you may have heard or even seen on the statements, if you apply early, before your full retirement age, that you'll get a lower benefit. But if you delay it, you'll get a higher benefit. So how does all that factor in? How do you maximize your benefit and do the best you can? Because again, we don't have all the answers. And when I say that, meaning, well, if we knew the date of death, then we could back into the right answer regarding Social Security. But we don't have that answer. So we have to make decisions without all of the information. We want to help people understand what those decisions are. There's a lot of information out there about the solvency of the Social Security system. And I always like to look at, let's just look at what the Social Security trustees say. Every single year, they publish a comprehensive report, and they show the long-range outlook for Social Security. So this is from 2025's results. We've got total income, $1.4 trillion. So that's how much money came into the system, and that's via the payroll tax that workers pay, and also interest earned on the trust fund balance, which is at the beginning of 2025 was $2.7 trillion. So all these years when Social Security was put into place, there's essentially been an excess. I mean, there's been years in the past where there was a declining balance in the trust funds, but the trust funds have not ever gone to zero. You can see the expenditures there, $1.6 trillion. So that gives us I say small, it's also relative to the income and expenses, but also to the overall balance. $160 billion was the decrease or reduction in the trust fund balance, giving us $2.5 trillion as the ending balance in 2025. So that's where the trust funds stand as of the end of last year. Now here's what the projection looks like. So again, this is all from Social Security Trustees Report, and they project out over 75 years. And over that period, this trend of expenses being higher than income continues, and by 2034, the trust funds are projected to be exhausted. So no balance anymore in the trust funds. And at that point in time, there would be enough current workers to pay in enough to cover 81% of benefits. So that would mean there's a 19% shortfall. So the government has choices. Again, this is all in 2034, assuming they don't do anything, which right now they haven't done anything. And those choices, none of them are real exciting. I mean, they could cut benefits across the board. I think that's highly unlikely. I think the most likely choice is that they're going to increase taxes. And this is whether they do it sooner rather than later, again, to shore up the trust funds. So maybe in the next few years, they start to look at Social Security and say, hey, the sooner we address this problem, the easier the solution gets. Congress isn't known for their proactiveness when it comes to things like this, because this is not a new issue. This has been discussed. I can think of this going back 20 years where they've been talking about Social Security and running out of money. So the sooner they address it, the easier the solution is. The longer they wait, the harder it's going to be. But here's what they could do: increase the taxes. And one of the ways to increase the taxes is to look at how much, what the dollar amount of earnings that are subject to the Social Security tax. So right now, each individual, while you're working, again, this is W-2 income, this is earned income, like whether you're self-employed. This does not apply, this Social Security tax does not apply to IRA distributions, passive income, dividends, interest, things like that. It's only what is considered earned income, which is from working. And you're right now in 2026, 184,500. Once you earn more than that, the Social Security tax stops, which is a 6.2% tax rate, and you pay 6.2%. Your employer pays 6.2%, and that is what makes up the Social Security. 12.4% is what goes into the Social Security trust funds each year for each employed worker. They could lift that cap. They could just say there's no cap, or they could have a declining percentage rate as that dollar amount goes up. There's a lot of ways they can adjust that. They could also look at raising the retirement age. So right now it's 67 for you to receive 100% of your Social Security benefits. You take it early at 62, you get less. If you delay to 70, you get more. People are living longer. When Social Security was first put into place, full retirement age was 65. And then in the early 80s, they made a change to that and increased it to 67. They could just reduce the benefits across the board. That is an option. I highly doubt that is what they're going to do, because they know people are projecting Social Security, they're planning around it, and if they were to change that, that's going to, not make many people happy, and Congress is concerned about getting voted back into office, so they don't necessarily want to upset a lot of people. But a way they could reduce future benefits without actually reducing the dollar amount is they could say, we're going to change the formula on how the cost of living adjustments are applied to Social Security. So what that means, well, Social Security goes up every year based on inflation. And they use the Consumer Price Index. There's many versions of that. There's one that they use. And in October every year, it's released of what the inflation adjustment is for the next year. And again, it's based on inflation. you know, fairly transparent on how they do that and how they look at it. They could change the law and say, well, we're not going to base it on inflation at, you know, dollar for dollar. Maybe they say, well, we'll do dollar for dollar up to 3%, and then if it's more than 3%, then it's going to be less than what actual inflation is. You know, again, a lot of different ways they could go about that, but that's a way they could reduce future benefits without actually like cutting the benefit. So lots of different ways they can address that. I don't think we're going to hear anything anytime soon, because Congress, 2034 is a long time in the political world, and it's someone else's problem, I think, is how they kind of look at it. All right, now let's look at how much can you expect to receive. So it's going to be based on how much you earned over your working career and the age at which you apply for benefits. Now, the formula for how they calculate it is, it's not simple. I would say it's fairly complex, and you know, I'm going to show you actually how it's calculated. So you may not want to follow along with this, but I've got examples, so it is easy to follow along. I think the formula is interesting, and you know, we work with a lot of engineers, and I believe they find some of this stuff interesting as well. So what they do, Social Security looks at your annual earnings over your entire lifetime. And you can see them. If you log into SSA.gov, you can pull up your earnings history. They'll show you every single year you paid into the system. And it's all data they've received from your tax filings. They index those earnings for inflation. So the earnings that you earned 35 years ago, the income that you had back then, well, that was a lower dollar amount because inflation was lower. So they try to right size everything by indexing it to inflation to make it equivalent to today's dollars. And then they use the 35 highest years of your earnings in the formula. So they're totaled up, divided by 35, they come up with an average. If you don't have 35 years of earnings, the missing years will be filled in with zeros. So that's how that works. So that would lower Social Security benefits for people who maybe have taken time out of the workforce. If someone stopped working to raise children, you might be eligible, you know, most likely, if you're married, you'd be eligible for spousal benefits, and we're going to show you how all those work. And then once they have that average index monthly earnings, AIME, they determine your, what they call primary insurance amount, which is the amount that is available to you when you reach full retirement age, which is 66, 67, depending on the year you were born. And then each year they apply the cost of living adjustments to keep up with the cost of living. All right, so here's the math visually so you can see how this works. So this person born in 1964, and you know, for simplicity, I just said they earned the maximum. You know, they paid in the maximum towards Social Security every single year since the age of 22. The average indexed monthly earnings would work out to be $14,358.10. That's if you've maximized Social Security for, you know, the 35 years that you're able to, that they include. So then when they're calculating the primary insurance amount, so this is the amount that you would receive at your full retirement age, so the 100% benefit. The first $1,286 is multiplied by 0.9. The amount between 1,287 and 7,749 is multiplied by 0.32. And then the amount over $7,750 is multiplied by 0.15. And You add all those three amounts up, and that gives you the total $4,216.91. So that's the amount that this person would receive at age 67, their full retirement age. Now, one thing I want to point out with this, you'll see, is it's skewed. So like the higher you go in terms of your earnings, and the closer you get to maxing out your earnings, the less those earnings, apply to this formula. So you see the top, the top third of the income only has a 15% weight in the formula. And then the second piece only has a 30% weight, whereas the first $1,200 is 90% weight. So if someone earned half the amount that you did, they don't get half the Social Security. The way the formula is skewed is it's weighted towards the lower end of earnings. The more earnings you have, the less weighting those higher amounts have. Okay, so now that we all can calculate our own benefits, common question, well, why shouldn't I claim it at 62 instead of delaying until my full retirement age or even 70? And let's talk through all the reasons why you would claim at 62, why you wouldn't claim at 62. Well, one, you'll get a reduced benefit by claiming it at 62. That's how they calculate it. And you also will have potentially taxes taking out of it. I'll show you how the taxes work. And then once Medicare starts, Medicare comes out of your Social Security check. So, again, you're locking in a reduced benefit for your entire life, and for your surviving spouse if you're married, depending on how the makeup of each of your work history and income and everything else. Which, again, we have a lot of examples. We're going to cover how all of those work. So let's think through when you should apply for benefits. And it's not an easy decision, and it can make a big difference in terms of overall dollars you receive over your lifetime. You're not going to know if you made a right or wrong decision until the end of your life. It's one of those things that it takes time. And the way I like to think about it is there are factors that are unknowns that are part of this decision. So it isn't necessarily about saying, hey, we got the answer right or we made the right decision. It's just, well, let's avoid making the decisions that are not optimal. Because there are decisions where it's like, well, I wouldn't claim it because of these other things that you have going on. I'd wait. Or no, you should claim it because if you're in poor health and you don't have a long life expectancy, well, the sooner you get it, the more money you're receiving, and the less you're at least getting something. Versus, because if you pass away and you didn't turn it on, unless you're married, there really isn't much that it just goes away at that point. So health status is a big factor, which goes hand in hand with life expectancy. Do you need the income? I mean, that's a big factor too. One of the major ways, major decisions is, well, are you still working or not? Are you earning income and claiming Social Security early? And then two, do you have a survivor need? That's again, another factor. So let's look at the full retirement age. Again, as I mentioned, it used to be 65. Now it's 67. And it's been kind of phased in here since 1983, this increase to 67. You can see here what the year of birth 1943 to 1954, full retirement age is 66, slowly increases to 67 if you're born in 1960 or later. So, reason that's important is because that determines how much of a reduction you receive if you claim Social Security early. So if you want to start Social Security at age 62 and your full retirement age is 66, you'll get 75% of your benefits. If you full retirement age is 67, you'll get 70% of your benefits. And you can see how that adjusts each year you wait. Now, every single month you delay benefits, you get an increase. So the way you don't have to wait until your birthday, you don't have like an annual window where Social Security wants to know, are you taking it, are you not taking it? It's once you're eligible at 62, you can decide anytime to turn it on, and if you wait 62 and 6 months, you'll get 6 months. You'll get a benefit for 6 months, or an increased benefit for those 6 months that you waited. So you get credit every single month you delay. And you can see, how that changes between 66 and 67. If you wait to take Social Security, you can delay it up to age 70. And how much your benefit increases is also based on your full retirement age. It's a 8% increase every year you wait, and it works the same way as taking it early. You get every month you delay it past your full retirement age, you get a benefit for that month. You get an increase. So again, you have this open window from 62 to 70 to turn on Social Security. As I mentioned, you go to ssa.gov. You can pull your Social Security statements there to see what your Social Security benefit is. They have calculators on there. You can look at your earnings history. I encourage everyone, if you haven't logged on to that, to go ahead and do that. They have a login process with the government that's kind of changed over the years. So again, I always encourage people to just make sure you can get into the system and get everything squared away. You also can apply for your benefit online if you choose to do so. Okay, so let's look at a reason that you may delay benefits. We talked about some of those other things. Well, you get more money by delaying it, but let's look at it from a dollar standpoint. So in this example, if your benefit at 67, so 67 is your full retirement age, it's $3,000. If you claimed it early at 62, you'd receive $2,100. If you delayed it to 70, you'd receive $3,720. And that's without applying the cost of living increases too. That's just dollar for dollar. Now, if you factor in the cost of living increases, you can see how much more you're getting, because the cost of living increases are compounding off a higher dollar amount when you delay it. So I think this visual, when you can see the dollars, does help a lot. And this is kind of just taking that same table and running it out longer, where you can see what the benefit is by claiming it at certain ages and living to a certain age, how that delaying makes sense. And a lot of times I think people think, well, that's what most financial people say is you should delay your benefit. And the math, of course, will show that, but it's all based on life expectancy. So, again, that there's an unknown there, and everyone has to make a decision that just makes sense for them. What, again, as I mentioned earlier, we just want to avoid the less optimal decisions. Now, how do taxes work with Social Security? So this is not the payroll tax that you pay into. This is how, when you're receiving your benefit, how the government and the IRS determines how much of your Social Security check is subject to income taxes. Well, there's a couple of different things to factor into this. Well, one, they have a thing called the annual earnings test. And this only applies if you're claiming Social Security early, so prior to your full retirement age. So using 67 as the full retirement age. And if you claim Social Security at 62, so you're claiming it early, what Social Security says is that if you work and claim Social Security early, then they basically say we want you to earn under a certain dollar amount. And if you earn more than this, then we're going to claw back some of your Social Security benefits. And so that threshold, and this is at the individual level. It doesn't change if you're married or not. It's just at the individual level. $1 in benefits will be withheld for every $2 you earn over $24,480. And this threshold, $24,480, that increases slightly every year. And so they'll factor that in if you claim early and have a W-2 or self-employment. This doesn't apply to IRA distributions, doesn't apply to dividends, interests, all of the typical retirement incomes, things. Those aren't subject to this. It's only earned income. Let's look at taxes here, because they do tax Social Security. But to determine how much of it's taxable, it's based on various income levels. And they don't just have, it's not this is its own formula to determine what is income in Social Security taxation purposes. So they have this thing called provisional income, which includes your adjusted gross income plus 1/2 of your Social Security benefit plus any tax exempt interest. So that'd be interest that you would receive that is not subject to federal or state taxes. Typically interest received from municipal bonds, and it'd only be those bonds that you held outside of retirement accounts. So that's how they add those three things up, and that's your provisional income. If it's under $32,000 and you're married, then no, your Social Security is completely tax-free. And then if it's between $32,000 and $44,000, then up to 50% of your Social Security counts as income, which then just flows through to whatever bracket you're in from a federal and state standpoint. Actually, most states don't tax Social Security anymore. Missouri and Kansas used to, they don't anymore. So, that's nice for residents of Missouri and Kansas. Once that formula that provisional income gets over 44,000, then 85% of it counts it in as income. So it's not an 85% tax, just 85% of it counts as income, which then gets taxed at whatever bracket you're in. And this, includes, I have the different thresholds here for single filers and married filing separately too, so you can see those. Okay, so how do we reduce or minimize the taxes on Social Security? Well, one way is to lower your other income. Is there investment income, IRA distributions that we could reduce that would keep us under these thresholds? In some cases, it's just not possible because those thresholds are pretty low. So it kind of is what it is. But things that we could look at, that we always look at, how do we minimize our tax liability, both in current year and in future years? Because it's not about necessarily minimizing taxes today. It's minimizing taxes over our lifetime. And so there are times where it's like, well, yes, you could pay less today, but we project that you'll pay more of your lifetime. So if we pay a little bit today by taking money out of an IRA and converting it to a Roth IRA, that really looks like that's going to reduce our lifetime tax bill. So again, it's not always maximizing or minimizing today's tax. It's minimizing our lifetime tax. Medicare too is another factor with your Social Security check. So once you're on Social Security, so you're receiving Social Security, and you're 65 or older and enrolled in Medicare, Part B specifically, your Part B premium is withheld from your Social Security check or your deposit, because they direct deposit these. They don't mail you checks on Social Security. Right now in 2026, the base Part B premium is $202.90. You could individually, people could be paying more than that, because if their Part B is subject to IRMA, which is a income-related adjustment to your Medicare based on higher income people, but that's the base amount from what your Part B is. So key things to remember: if you apply early, your benefits are lower for your entire life, whatever that, whatever period or how much of a reduction you take, that's locked in. And those COLAs can magnify that. There is tax and Medicare premiums to be aware of when it comes to your Social Security deposit. And if it makes sense for you to claim Social Security early and work, nothing wrong with that. Just we want to know where those thresholds are, so you're not paying back or getting penalized by earning too much and then having to give your Social Security check back. Because in those situations, like, you're getting a delayed benefit, and if you have to pay a big portion of it back, it's like, well, now you've locked in a lower benefit for your life and are paying it back. And then too, thinking about the survivor benefit when it comes to delaying benefits. And that's what we're going to cover next, the survivor benefit. We're going to talk through like the spousal benefit, because those go hand in hand. The way we like to think about it for married folks is to maximize the higher earners benefit to protect the surviving spouse. I mean, again, based on age, some spouses that don't have high benefits are older. And, we just want to look at, well, who in this financial plan has the longest life expectancy, and how do we maximize their benefit? So that can mean encouraging the higher earning spouse to delay to age 70, because you're getting the maximum benefit for the longest amount of time when we look at the joint life expectancy for a couple. Okay, so let's look at the spousal benefit. And, it applies to either gender and same-sex spouses. That they don't have any caveats to that. So the spousal benefit is 50% of the working spouse's primary insurance amount, which is, that's the amount they're eligible for, that 100%, at age 67, using that as our constant 100% age. So in this example, if John's benefit, 100% of his benefit is $2,000, and Jane, she worked, just took time off, didn't earn as much as John, her benefit at her full retirement age, based on her work record, is $800. Well, if she claims it at 67, her full retirement age, she'll get $1,000, not $800, because her spousal benefit is you get the higher of the two between the spousal benefit or your own benefit. So she's going to get that $200 increase. Here are the rules kind of around that. The higher earning spouse must have filed for benefits, so that has to have happened to be able to apply for the spousal benefit. The lower earning spouse must be at least 62, because you can receive a reduced spousal benefit. Just to get the full spousal benefit, you have to, the spouse has to wait until their full retirement age. And there is no delayed credits, meaning the spousal benefit caps at age 67. It does not continue to increase by delaying it to age 70. So how do we maximize the spousal benefits? Well, one of the ways around this is to, thought process is to coordinate these benefits. And here's an example where, for questions we like to ask: is the lower earning spouse's full retirement income, the amount they receive at their full retirement age, is more or less than 50% of the higher earning spouse's amount at full retirement age? If the lower earning spouse's benefit is more than 50% of the higher earning spouse, which means the spousal benefit doesn't necessarily come into play, you would maximize your lifetime benefits, as a joint couple, if you delayed age 70, all things being equal. Based on kind of average or longer than average life expectancies, you'll get the maximum amount of your lifetime. But that's not always the case. So, if the lower earning spouse's amount is less than 50% of the higher earning spouse's full retirement benefit, then we have this thing called the hybrid strategy. And that's where the lower earning spouse goes ahead and claims early. This gets income started soon as the lower earning spouse turns 62. And then the higher earning spouse still claims at 70 in order to maximize the higher benefit over both lifetimes. Again, there's a lot of different ways to look at this, and a lot of factors that go in that are unique to individuals and couples that we always encourage people, let's sit down, cover all of the different choices that you have, and one of the decisions is, hey, we're going to delay it. Great. That doesn't mean, okay, we're not going to talk about it again until we just, if you're 62, if we're going to delay it, we talk about it all the time, because you could turn it on at any time and things change, and we want to factor that into the financial plan. What about widowed or divorced individuals? Well, you may be eligible for survivor benefits, divorced spousal benefits, or divorced spouse survivor benefits. Let's look at the survivor benefits and how survivor benefits work, and then we'll talk about the divorced spouse benefits and how those factor in. If we thought the spousal benefits were complicated, the survivor benefits can be even more complicated. Okay, there are two factors that influence the amount of the survivor benefit. The first factor is the age at which the deceased spouse claimed their own retirement benefit. If they applied for Social Security before their full retirement age, the survivor benefit will be limited to their actual benefit or 82.5% of their full retirement age amount, whichever is higher. If the deceased applied at their full retirement age, the survivor benefit will equal 100% of that, amount. You'll get that dollar for dollar. If they delayed it to age 70, the survivor benefit will increase. You'll get the credits just like the deceased spouse did. So that's why we talk about delaying it is a benefit to the surviving spouse, because they get that higher amount too. So the other factor that influences the amount of the survivor benefit is the age at which the widow or widower claims the survivor benefit. If they can claim it as early as age 60 or even 50 if they're disabled, the survivor benefit, if they claim it early, like that early, would be 71.5% of the decedent's amount at their full retirement age. If the surviving spouse delays it to their full retirement age or later, the survivor benefit will equal 100% of the original amount. So slightly different age band there, 60 to 70 versus 62 to 70. So here's an example. Okay, we have two spouses. They're both receiving benefits. One spouse dies. How does this work? Well, okay, so we have Joe and Julie. They're married. Both are over full retirement age and currently receiving Social Security. Joe's benefit is $3,600 a month, and Julie's benefit is $1,800 a month. If Joe dies, Julie's $1,800 a month benefit will stop, and she'll start receiving $3,600. Now, you might have caught this. It's like, well, she'll get the higher amount, $3,600, but hers is going away. So the total amount coming into, to Julie is less than, what it was when they were both living, because one of the the lower benefit is going away. You're losing some of your Social Security, as if, which makes sense. They're giving you the higher of the two, but you're getting overall less when one spouse dies. Now, here's an example. If the deceased spouse had delayed their benefit, Joe filed for Social Security in this example at age 70. His benefit would be 124% of the $3,600 from the previous example. So that'd be almost $4,500. And if he passes, then Julie would receive that $4,464. So just to show you how that spouse surviving benefit increases when you delay it. Some rules for the survivor benefits. Marriage must have lasted for at least 9 months unless the death is ruled an accident. To start benefits, the survivor must be at least age 60 or 50 if disabled. However, the widow or widower, if they apply before their full retirement age, the benefit would be reduced. If you were married before age 60, you'll not be able to receive a survivor benefit based on your previous spouse's earnings record, unless that marriage ends. And a divorced spouse survivor benefit is available if the marriage lasted at least 10 years. So let's talk through divorced spousal benefits. So they can receive a spousal benefit based on their ex-spouse's work record. Again, provided that the marriage lasted at least 10 years and the person receiving benefits is currently unmarried. If the divorce occurred more than 2 years ago, the ex-spouse doesn't need to have filed for their benefit. But the ex-spouse has to be at least 62. A lot of different rules here. So again, why I encourage people to kind of talk through this with a financial professional. Some more rules for the divorced spouse benefits. More than one ex-spouse can receive benefits on the same worker's record. So if each marriage lasted at least 10 years, you could 3, 4, 5 marriages could all ex-spouses could all be receiving benefits, again, as long as it lasted 10 years. And benefits paid to one ex-spouse does not impact the working spouse, the current spouse. There's no reduction because of this divorce to anyone else. You don't even need to know their, anything about your ex-spouse. Only enough identifying information that the people at Social Security can look up and confirm that you were married and who the person was, but don't need to know where they live, don't need to know anything about them. Now, if you're receiving divorced spouse benefits and you remarry, your divorced spouse benefits will stop. Now, you could be eligible then for spousal benefits on your new married spouse's work record. So, something to be aware of if that's some factor into your situation. All right. Well, we covered a lot today. A lot of different scenarios, a lot of different examples, and we want to help people make better decisions around everything in their financial life. But Social Security is one that, again, there's a lot of different choices and ways to think about it. So we want to help people think through that. Whether you're married, widow, widower, divorced, again, a lot of different things to look at. But the key thing is you've got to look at Social Security in the context of your overall financial plan. Do you have a pension? How much do you have in an IRA or a 401k? When am I forced to start taking distributions out of my retirement accounts, which is currently age 63, but that's going to be increasing to age 75 here over time? How much do I have in other investments? Am I going to work or not? How healthy am I? All of these things factor into the decision on when to claim Social Security. And that's why, I've said this several times. I encourage everyone, clients of Keen Wealth, of course, we're doing this for you already. You're experiencing this. But if you're not a client of Keen Wealth, we have a team of CFPs here and able to help you think through these things, whether it's Social Security or even Medicare or lifetime tax plan, a lot of different financial situations. Today's topic's around Social Security, but we want to help you think through all of that stuff and put it all together in a financial plan. So we'll help you think through those choices, put a plan together, talk through if there's a fit way for us to help you long term. We'll discuss that. If everything is great and good to go, we'll tell you that too. No cost or obligation for you to sit down with us and go through that. We just want to be of help and help people think through these things and make the best decision they have with the information that's available to them. Well, thank you all for attending today's webinar. Again, check us out, KeenWealthAdvisors.com, Retirement Resources tab. You can find blog, podcasts, and webinars. If you'd like a copy of the book, send me an email, mwilson@KeenWealthAdvisors.com, or reply to any emails that you receive from us, and we will get a copy of the book out to you. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/KeenWealthAdvisors. And again, thank you all for all your questions. Our next podcast episode, you'll see us answering those questions, so I encourage you to check that out. Thank you.